I started to think about what other projects we can do as LGBT seniors. And there was an opportunity at the SPAR Center to meet with some 12-year-old students to have a discussion about our lives and their lives. And during that time, I realized that young people have an entirely different view than I have now or that I had when I was younger. So it suddenly dawned on me that maybe a senior project could actually involve young people. And I thought that this is a perfect way to do that, because it's not charged sexually, it's a neutral way to do it. And it turns out that during this process, I realized you learn a lot about the people. So I can imagine a young person being in the same place I am, telling me, explaining to me how they view the world through their eyes at 18, 19, compared to how I viewed the world when I was 18 or 19. And on the other side of that, I think we as seniors that have kind of been there and done that can help the young people understand what they're going to face or what they might face. Certainly different than what we faced. But in that same respect, we can explain how we've kind of paved the way for them to have the lives that they have. You know, I feel it wasn't a happy experience necessarily, but we did fight for our rights. You know, I mean, it came a point where we just said, we're tired of this and we're not going to take it anymore. And I think that was the beginning of the gay movement, and it was our generation that did that. I was born in Anderson, Indiana, lived my early life in Muncie, Indiana, in the city. And then we moved to a farm in rural Ohio. And I spent my junior high and high school days on a farm in Ohio. And growing up in the country is different than growing up in the city. I knew about gay people, and I knew there were gay jokes and things like that. It somehow never identified it with me. You know, I never thought that I was gay. And that's kind of an issue in itself. How can you not know your sexuality? You know, people say, you know, when did you come out? That's a concept that's hard to understand, because how could you not know? Well, the truth is there's not like books on, you know, in our age, you know, books on how do you come out and what does it mean to be gay. I mean, we did have those little books that we put inside the home and gardens, you know, but somehow never dawned on me that had anything to do with being gay. So after that period, it turned into kind of a wonderful life, and it's been a roller coaster. And you know, my coming out experience was interesting. I met a woman and I really, really loved her. It was kind of a religious issue. I was a minister and she played the organ, so there wasn't any issues about sexuality or any kind of things like that, but I really cared for her. And we were on the verge of being married, and I moved into a place that was kind of like the YMCA, that was for young men that were working. You know, they had a meal and things like that. And I met a guy there, and in 2 days or 3 days, I was more comfortable with him than I was with Chris. So I thought, uh-oh, something's wrong here. And I realized at that point I was gay. And it is kind of like an epiphany. It comes over, you think, uh-oh, all the puzzles fit, and all the things that happened to you were younger make sense, and it's like a realization. So I thought, well, the first thing I do is have to tell her what happened. So I told her, and she didn't take it well. You know, she was very distraught. And then it goes into something more or less like a novella. She was living with her aunt, and she told her aunt that she wasn't going to be able to be married, and her aunt had a heart attack and died. And I felt like the jerk of the world. You know, we'd already bought the wedding dress and all the things, and her mother loved me, and it was really hard on me psychologically. So I copped out and ran away with that guy to Chicago. And after a week in Chicago, the guy went off with somebody else. And there I am in Chicago, in the YMCA, never actually been away from home, feeling like the jerk of the world. I ruined somebody's life, and I didn't know I was going to do that. I ultimately knew that it was the right decision. But after 3 days of not eating well and not sleeping well, you get kind of goofy. And it was in March, and it snowed the night before, and so I decided it's just not worth it. I'm going to jump into Lake Michigan and kill myself. And I remember being very careful and writing a note that I took a long time to make sure was the perfect suicide note. And then when I got to the lake, I decided I have to be careful, so I put it in the pocket of my coat and hung it up on a tree so that the snow wouldn't cover it. And I thought, well, you know, it's not a nice way for my mother to find out from the Chicago Tribune that her son, you know, committed suicide. And at that point in Lake Michigan, it was kind of like a levee. And I thought, okay, this is it. And I jumped into the water. And the problem was the water was only 3 feet deep. I was like up to my thighs in cold water. And this woman was walking with her dog, and she goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And I said, "I'm going to commit suicide." And she said, "Honey, you're going to need a lot more water." and it was like a lightning bolt struck me, you know. It just suddenly realized that, you know, this is who I am, and I'm going to have to live like this. And it wasn't a hard transition. It was literally the next day, I'm the same person. I just happened to be gay. I still have guilty feelings about that, especially when her mother still sends me Christmas cards. And I have a guilt complex about that. But I'm glad I did it, because it wouldn't have been fair to her or to me.